Hello and welcome to the podcast. In this mini impromptu episode, I want to talk about Keir Starmer. I've stayed away from talking about Keir and Labour because I think a lot of people are asking the right questions about them and there are other topics to explore. So this is not the episode that I was going to post. However, I do feel that I have something important to ask about the latest issue around Keir and the government, and that's about the voice coach. From The Independent, the headline is, Starmer questioned on whether voice coach visit breached lockdown rules. Keir Starmer is facing accusations that he breached COVID rules by meeting a voice coach during the winter of 2020. The Prime Minister reportedly employed Leonie Mellinger to help him prepare a response to Boris Johnson's Brexit deal, according to a book by two Sunday Times journalists. Excerpts of the book published in the Sunday Times said she qualified for key worker status and visited Labour Party headquarters wearing a face mask in December 2020 to advise Sir Keir on how to publicly respond to the Brexit deal. Richard Holden has written to the Prime Minister asking him whether he thinks it was a breach of the law. Now we'll look actually at some of the questions, in fact all of the questions that Richard Holden has asked in his letter. And that's all I'm going to read from the Independent article. I've noted elsewhere from more than one source that I think the visit was Christmas Eve as well. It has been said. And that makes it, if that's true, even slightly more bizarre. So essentially what we have is someone who during, again, it has been reported, Tier 4 lockdown restrictions, visiting to coach Keir to help him deliver a speech more effectively, a face-to-face meeting. Let me take us to Richard Holden's letter. Bottom of page 1. Here's the questions he's asking. Does the Prime Minister think that this is a breach of the law? Good question. Now, one of the reasons that Richard Holden is asking that is because you may or may not recall that Boris Johnson was fined for having a party and people got annoyed. Understandably. And Keir Starmer was very vocal in terms of criticising Boris Johnson. The Labour Party met in Durham, I think it was, and I believe there were photographs of people having drinks, including Keir. An investigation took place. It was deemed that this was a work meeting, and so they couldn't have been having fun. If there was alcohol, well, that didn't matter. And I believe that within the letter of the law, as I recall this, it was just about fair that was the case. But in some ways, you kind of could argue that it was a get-together of colleagues, and that's what was happening with Boris. But yeah, it did have the name party attached to it, and there was more frivolity probably than the Durham meeting. So you kind of go fair enough. But I also believe that Keir Starmer said round about that time something like lawmakers can't be lawbreakers. And if it is deemed that we broke the rules in the same way that Boris Johnson and his crew did, then I will resign. So this is why this voice coach gate, as it's called, is interesting. Question 2, will you appoint an independent investigator? I believe this is what happened first from Partygate, the Boris Johnson thing. Next question. Did the Labour Party receive legal advice about how to get around COVID regulations? In this period, did Ms. Mellinger contract COVID-19? That's a very good question. Did she have it at some point? potentially was still visiting, then what we can do is go to the next page in this letter. Furthermore, the Sunday Times also reports, in brackets Starmer, considered her, in brackets Mellinger, role, so her role, so essential that Mellinger even qualified for key worker status during the pandemic. However, qualification for key worker status was only relevant for administrative occupations that extended to the essential delivery of the COVID-19 response, and those which were essential to public services. The provision, therefore, of a voice coach is not a qualifier. It's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, not in a month of Sundays. Unless she literally cut keys, she wasn't a key worker. A voice coach. Now, here's what I find interesting about this. If you've ever received any presentation training, you may, in fact, have received vocal training, or perhaps you have given vocal training, critiqued other people in terms of their presentation, their facilitation abilities, then you know that it's best to be face to face, but you don't have to be. There's certainly things you can do quite easily, in fact, these days, online. So the question I'd like to see asked is, what is it that you couldn't do online that you had to do face to face? Okay, high def cameras, 4K perhaps, good sound, stand there, Keir, deliver the speech. All right, your weight's too much on one leg, that makes you look weak. When you make those hand gestures, you're sweeping away what you just said. So try and use more decisive and cutting language when you're talking about cutting through X, Y, Z or Z. And at that point, smile, Keir. No, a real smile, Keir. A Duchenne smile, Keir. And so on. This is doable online. Very much so. Whether it's long shot or whether you want a close-up and you're literally listening to the voice. And my take on what the voice coach would be doing, because I think she's a dramatist, an actress as well, I believe, could be wrong, I think so, it would be getting them to deliver certain things in a certain way. So don't speed up there, lower your tone, go down at the end of the sentence, don't put a questioning tone in at that point. So it would be the speech again and again and again until it was refined. And all that can definitely be done online. Maybe there were extenuating circumstances, maybe something else needed to be done, maybe she needed to check his diaphragmatic breathing or something like that. But really, Christmas, Tier 4, and maybe Christmas Eve, could have been a guest or something, but let's stick with the official story, a voice coach. A key worker. Could this have been done via Zoom? And if not, why not? Or whatever platform you want to use. There are ways to encrypt this stuff. And I'm sure that Downing Street has the capability, lest someone tune in and listen to Keir delivering his speech again and again and again and again. I don't think that that's particularly newsworthy, but even if someone could hack that, it's not exactly the end of the world in terms of security. But they can encrypt these things. Of course, most of what we use is to a degree encrypted. So there we have it. What on earth has he been doing? And I'll finish off by saying this. The idea of being able to do that online using a laptop, a camera or an iPad or something reminds me of what was happening during those restrictions, during those lockdowns. People were having to say goodbye to their loved ones, sometimes the last words, the last vision of them from a machine, a screen, something like, if not exactly like an iPad or whatever it may have been. And that was horrendous and horrific for a lot of people. So I ask Keir and his government, couldn't you have used something like a screen to allow a voice coach to deliver a training session to the PM when other people couldn't see the relatives and couldn't see them during the last minutes on earth?